showing the cluster of thunderstorms that was in Tennessee getting into our area. And this is going to create some complexity in terms of how the interaction of these two occurs. Number one, before we get started on the whole video, if you guys enjoy the Facebook Lives, please throw a thumbs up across the screen. Number two, share the video. The most important thing to me is the shares. There's 2,700 people in here right now. If everybody shares this video, and let's just say you have 10 followers per person, that would mean 27,000 people would be alerted that I am live and that they can get weather information, not about the country, but about our area. And as you guys know, that's what we do. We focus on Kentucky and Indiana, and because it's our viewing area. So if you have anybody in Kentucky or Indiana that is interested, let them know when you share the video. Mark's going to be covering the severe weather threat tonight, when the storms move in, what are the main concerns. We do have a tornado warning right now near the Bowling Green area. It is complicated because we've got some rain ahead of that now that may end up also working that portion of the atmosphere over a little bit. So I would tell you that, number one, we're going to see severe tonight in our area. Number two, I still think that probably 50% of our counties would go under a warning. I told you we'd get a watch. We already have a tornado watch, but where it's going to get complicated in terms of what can produce what type of severe weather, and you'll see the conditions are highly favorable, but it is a complex interaction between two lines. When we get our worst severe weather, 1974, 2021, when Mayfield was hit, and 2012 here when Pekin and Borden, Chelsea and Henryville were hit, it was individual cells that were way ahead of a line. They did not have to deal with the line itself. So these are things that make it quite complicated. Again, share the video with your friends, family, let them know we're going to be discussing. So let's get into this. Storms Prediction Center has a high risk of severe weather from Paducah, westward and southward into northeast Arkansas. We already know that a tornado did significant damage in parts of Arkansas. There are storm chasers on there that are showing video of what looks like a strong to maybe even a violent tornado. And there was a tornado emergency. Lakeview, is that the location where I said it was earlier in Arkansas? Lakeview, Arkansas, which is northeast Arkansas, had a tornado emergency. And you hate to see stuff like that because that's not low. We're not in the high risk. We don't belong in the high risk. The moderate is appropriate. And you can see it goes from around Litchfield, E-Town, Louisville, Madison, includes North Vernon, Seymour, and includes areas like Salem, Paoli, southward through Tell City, Hardinsburg. And your locations are going to be in the moderate risk. The enhanced risk is for our far eastern counties. In case you're curious, enhanced is what we were under for our severe weather risk on Sunday. Sunday produced warnings in almost every one of our counties. I said this yesterday, that I'm not necessarily convinced that this will produce more warnings than what we saw on Sunday night, but the magnitude of wind energy is much higher, and that concerns me that we could see more instances of destructive wind and more instances of a stronger tornado, and that's the reason why we have this moderate risk of severe weather for our area. So we'll look at the tornado probabilities where we haven't seen much change out of this. I know that SPC's late risk should be coming out, if not has come out, and it has. The only adjustment they made basically to this is they adjusted the tornado risk maybe a fraction further west, but it's very, very minimal. 15% probability of tornadoes including Louisville, all the moderate risk, which is Hardinsburg, Paoli, Bedford, Seymour, through North Vernon, Salem, Scottsburg, Clarksville, New Albany, Jeff, and most of Louisville. 15% probability, number two, you notice that there's hatch lines in there. What does that mean? So these are issued with hatch if there's a 10% chance or greater of a EF2 plus tornado. And that's the reason why they have the hatch there. And I think that we would all say the same thing. I don't think you couldn't put it there, and you'll see why when I start to show you the wind energy. The damaging wind threat for Louisville is at 45%. This is the exact same threat that you had on Sunday in terms of probability. Also hatched, which means 70 plus mile per hour winds. 60 is damaging, 70 is destructive. So this ratchets it up. On top of that, we have a little bit more bloom in our leaves, not a ton, but we also have seen multiple severe weather scenarios in the last couple of weeks. So it's conceivable those maybe loosen some roots and maybe weaken the trees a little bit more. So it does mean that you have to be a little bit more concerned about power outage. We've got a tornado watch in effect for our area, and you can see the problem here. So number one, tornado watch, this is not a PDS. PD what? So I posted this earlier and some asked me what that means. P is particularly, D is dangerous, S is situation. PDS tornado watch means it's a particularly dangerous situation. When are those issued? They're issued when the Storms Prediction Center has high confidence in destructive, strong to violent tornadoes. They did not opt to go PDS in our area. So the next question I know is going to be asked, Mark, if you were the one doing this, would you have issued a PDS on this? My answer is no. The reason I would not have is only because there is complexity. If this was a slam dunk, I'd say yes. I would not call this a slam dunk in terms of the outcome. I would tell you it's a slam dunk that if you're west of I-65, you're going to get a number of warnings, and a lot of our southern Indiana counties are going to get a ton of warnings. It becomes a little bit more complicated as you get near 65, in particular and east in our Kentucky side. This is until 2 a.m. So that should bother you a little bit. Everything is warned that's coming across the Indiana-Illinois border. There is nothing that's not warned. Some severe, some tornado warned, but there's nothing on that line that is not tornado warned or severe thunderstorm warned. And you can see, I mean, there's a lot. And you'll also notice, let me just turn that lightning off because there's just so much lightning on there. At times it becomes difficult to see. You can see there's a purple in there, which means that there's a tornado confirmed on the ground. There's just warnings everywhere. This coming out of Cape Girardeau is a confirmed tornado on the ground. You can see there are, it is a bad situation in Arkansas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tornadoes confirmed on the ground in eastern Arkansas. And this, if you recall, is where the high risk is. 6 confirmed tornadoes on the ground in eastern Arkansas. For our area, you can see the complexity, and this has been a little bit surprising. But the storms that have been coming out of Tennessee were in an atmosphere that's really supportive of severe, but they haven't generated as much severe as I would have thought. And there is one thing here that may be hurting these storms, and that is there's rain on the front of them. And that could weaken the fuel just a little bit and possibly protect us a little bit. So you can see in motion, normally when you get these renegades that exist out ahead of the line, they go absolutely wild. And again, in full transparency, that has simply not been the case on those. There's been tornado warnings, but I don't know if we've confirmed many tornadoes on those storms. Those are making their march northeast, and what's going to happen is those will move towards us, and then the batch behind are going to catch up. And that complexity of the competing for fuel between these as they kind of merge and catch up is where this gets ultra complicated. So that's the low, the trailing cold front, the storms that are ahead of it. Normally they don't have to compete with the other storms and would go a little bit more wild. But that has not been the case thus far today. So let's just know what we have going. It's 82 in Louisville with a dew point of 61. Easily high enough dew point, easily warm enough outside. Strong winds. New Albany right now you're sitting at 80, still warm, strong southerly winds, high dew point. We'll go to Corydon right now, you're at 80, you've got a south wind at 16 and a super high dew point. When you look at this, you notice that we have the heat, the warmth, we have wind energy. I mean, that's the surface winds out of the south. That's a lot. It's 25 to 30 miles an hour. Louisville on the hours gusted to 47, off hour at about 125 gusted to 50. Indy hit 60, and these are not thunderstorm related. The temperatures, I won't spend a tremendous amount of time on it, but they're warm. Our temperatures are running near about 80 degrees, so everything says we're good in the fuel department. Dew points right now are averaging between 63 and 67 in our area for the most part. They're a little bit lower in our northeast, but those numbers will come up. So when we look at the fuel, this is what we call fueler instability. For reference, the amount of instability we had on Sunday when the line went through was between about 1,000 and 15. And you can see in the now, it's over 2,000. It's a lot. And you can see until those storms go by that are in Bowling Green, the fuel values are in the neighborhood of 2,000. Once that goes by, then you get into the complexity of does that rob the fuel for the main line coming through behind for Louisville. The data still shows some fuel, but certainly not to the extent of what it was before that initial line comes through. All of the severe weather threat would be starting to go down around 3 to 4 a.m. From here, we're going to look at wind energy. And this always was going to be increasing through the evening. So the data is showing at 10 p.m. the environmental background wind energy is about 80 miles an hour, a mile above the ground. This was 45 to 50 on Sunday. So this is the reason why I mentioned that the ceiling is a little bit higher on this event. Could it underachieve? The complexity between those two lines do create some challenges here. But you can see, I mean, the data is showing around 1 a.m., a mile above the ground. And just remember, you're not talking about winds at the ground. You're talking about environmental winds that storms have to work with are absolutely off the charts insane. The data is showing 70 to 100 mile an hour winds a mile above the ground. I can tell you that is not something you see every day. And when you combine that with the fact that there should be some fuel in this time frame, it does make you uncomfortable. So looking at the supercell composite, the supercell what? This is how likely it is for thunderstorms to rotate. They're jacked right now at 15. The supercell composites on Sunday were between 3 and 5, and it generated 5 EF1 tornadoes. The data keeps these numbers high until that initial wave of thunderstorms goes by. But ahead of them, the main line, they're still in the 5 to 10 range in our southeast counties until 3, and then they start to tail. So everything says that we should have fuel. We have wind energy that supports severe. Where the complexity is how these two lines of thunderstorms interact. Will they interact? Will this weaken the line? What I can tell you is west of I-65, I don't think the initial wave of thunderstorms that's ahead can affect the fuel. And I've been saying to you every single video I've done that west of I-65 and then all of our counties in Indiana would have the greatest threat. And I would tell you at 8:15 tonight, I have not changed my opinion on that. And the problem is we don't exactly know how these two are going to be interacting. So at 8 o'clock, how is the data doing? The storms are in Bowling Green. They're not near Evansville and near Fordsville. So the data has got some serious problems in the placement of where that cluster is ahead. The cluster that's ahead of the line right now is here near Bowling Green, and the data has them west of that area by 75 miles, and that's way off. That is way off. So that means that we have to cast some questions on what we're looking at in terms of the data. I have a real problem with where it's showing these at 8:30. It's completely wrong. So this is, again, some of what we deal with. So I'm going to show you where that main line, where the ahead cluster would be. At 8:30, it'll be probably near around Munfordville, southward through Bowling Green. So you'd have to shift those thunderstorms that are near Paoli and Hardinsburg off to the east by about 75 miles. And that is a significant error in computer model data. And to just ignore this would be ridiculous. It is way off. So what this means then is the fuel in our southeast counties should become compromised to an extent by that line of thunderstorms. Or I should say the area of thunderstorms ahead of the main line. Those still are operating in a very unstable and wind energy driven atmosphere. So you can get absolutely tornado warnings out of that, and I think that remains entirely possible. However, what it also means is this effect on the main line should be minimal up until around E-Town through Louisville and through Seymour. West of that, the main line should still be very strong. East is when it should start to run into some of that rain-cooled air from that other line. So that primary line is advancing into our western counties around 9 to 10. I'm going to say 9:30 to 10:30. It may take on the later side of that. That other line that's ahead of it that's in Louisville, the location's completely wrong. So I would put that line at around 9:30 in areas like Madison through Louisville through maybe Campbellsville. But I think that I think the data is just too far advanced on that. You can see the primary main core line is in our western counties around 10. So what we need to watch here is, are there any of these renegade storms that develop out ahead of that line that are unrelated to the storms right now coming out of Bowling Green? Because those, again, are misplaced in where the data has those. It just, you know, I say this a lot, but this is why you don't post computer model data online out of context and just put wow or OMG, because computer model data is just, it's a tool we use, but to blindly look at it without any analysis from a meteorologist is just a guarantee of giving bogus, wrong information. I think that the timeline on the main line is fine. And I think, again, we'll watch around 10:30-ish in areas like Bedford, Paoli through around Jasper. That line is advancing at 11:30 from Seymour through Salem, through English, through around Hardinsburg. I believe the intensity in what I see in the data. I believe this is going to be severe. I believe much of this line will have warnings, some severe, some tornado warnings. The data has this now about an hour or two later in Louisville. So it's bringing it to the city around midnight to 12:30. I would tell you just be aware from around 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. You can also see that the data is showing a decrease in intensity, but remember, those initial wave of thunderstorms are in the wrong place. So is that going to affect the fuel in Louisville, or would that affect it east of Louisville? I would argue east of Louisville. Either way you look at this, you still have to recognize that there are breaks within this line and there are embedded supercells in here. This is working in an atmosphere that has incredible wind energy that changes direction with height. Number two, this is functioning in absolutely adequate fuel to generate severe, including tornadoes, some strong. You know, if you were to ask me, is this a high risk of strong tornadoes, my answer is no. But is there a risk of strong tornadoes? My answer is yes. Would I have put the hatched area over our area? My answer is yes. And it's because when you look at what we have environmentally, you cannot ignore that. The storms are then approaching Frankfort, E-Town, Munfordville around 2, and then they're starting to transition into a heavy rain threat as we go towards 4 a.m. And you can see our southeast counties are just getting pummeled with very heavy rain late tonight, and Louisville continues to see rain through the morning hours. So back over to this. You can kind of see now part of the reason why SPC has their risk the way they do. We don't exactly know how those storms in our southeast counties are going to react. Thus far, they've been primarily severe and non-tornado warned. And it appears that they just simply have gotten ahead of where the best wind energy is. What we know is that those are unlikely to affect the metro and the area that you see in the magenta here. And so we know that that back end line should stay strong to severe through that magenta area where there's a 45% probability. Notice the hatched area and the damaging winds means some destructive winds are possible. I would tell you simply from my analysis of what the Storms Prediction Center has, I think they have a really, really good product out there right now, and I would not make any significant changes. Number two, they've got a 15% probability of tornadoes for our area where the red is, and that's in the moderate risk. The rest of our area is at 10%. I don't have a problem there. I'm just not 100% sure on our southeast counties because of the location of that line and how poorly the data is doing. Notice all of our area, everybody in our viewing area is in the hatched area, which means a 10% chance or greater of an EF2 plus tornado. Since I have you here, I do want to mention that we've got the flood watch through Sunday. Number two, you can see that we've got there's flood warnings already now ongoing in Indiana. And the data has come back a little bit in terms of rain totals, but it's not significant. Where we did see some 12-inch totals, now we're seeing through Sunday widespread 5 to 8s. I think that's realistic. Some were really, really aggressive in calling this historic rain in a 6-day period. I will tell you that the Weather Service said that if some of the computer model data came to fruition, it would be historic. They never went out there and started jumping on a pole screaming that this would be historic. And credit to them, because there's waves of thunderstorms involved. And do I think we get flooding rains? Yes. Do I think we get potentially significant flash flooding? Yes. Do I think this could be a threat to life, life-threatening flooding? Absolutely. But do I think this could be historic in the fact that it could break the 1997 6-day rain totals? Right now, I would say it may be a little bit of a stretch. The data has come down just a pinch. It hasn't come down enormously. And I just will say this again. Many people are going to encounter flooded roadways later this week and have to make a decision. Do I drive through or do I turn around and live to fight another day? And we just have seen so many people drive into flooded roadways over the last few years and lose their lives. And I would just, if you encounter a flooded roadway, all I want you to do is think about your children, your parents, your spouse, your friends you work with, and I just want you to think about them and how they would react if you died driving into that flooded roadway. And I want you to think about how important it would be to still see them tomorrow. And just remember that. The flooding that we could see is life-threatening, and if you drive into a flooded roadway, it may be the last page of your story. And I can tell you, for me, for Marc Weinberg, I don't want my story to end that way. I do not. And I'm not saying that I haven't driven into a flooded roadway before, but I was a lot younger and I had not really realized the danger that it poses. As somebody that has seen this and worked in this field operationally for 25 years, I know how bad it can get, and I know what's at stake. So for me, under no circumstances would I ever make that call at this point. So before I jump into Q&A, for everybody in here, if you guys appreciate the Facebook Lives, please throw some thumbs up and hearts. There's 6,700 people in here. If every one of you clicks the share button, about 70,000 people at minimum will see this video and they'll know that they can jump in. The important thing to let them know is even when the video ends, you can still come back and watch it. And so the share is very valuable even when it comes to an end, and they can tab through whatever they want in the video, which means they can get to the portions they want. So you know, if we get tornado warnings, we would go live on TV. If we get severe thunderstorm warnings, I may try to cover it this way. We'll go on TV on WDRB News at 10, just like we always do, and at 11. And you will get live updates on WDRB News at 10 and 11. I'll be on at 10. Rick DeLuca's on at 11. You can see it's not just me in our weather center. We've got Rick and we have Bryce that are looking at radar right now, watching the storm with a wall cloud that is coming out of, at least weakened out of Bowling Green, but the storms to the south are still strong. I think that we would all tell you the same thing right now, and that is, it is really complicated in how these storms interact. So that said, again, please share the video, and let me open it up to Q&A. So a lot of people have asked me the question, where's the safest place in my house? And they've told me I've got this and this. I'm going to tell you that I can't tell you the answer to this completely without coming out to your house and knowing how your house was constructed. I would need to know if you have anchor bolts on your house to the foundation. If you have a manufactured home, I'd need to know if it's anchored to the foundation. Is it on poured foundation? Is it on brick foundation? I'd need to know how your roof was strapped to your home. If it's manufactured, are there hurricane straps? Are there not? I cannot tell you how safe your home would be without knowing that information. So the only thing I can tell you is that you have to seek shelter in sturdy structures. So if you go under a tornado warning, if you're in a manufactured home, my opinion is you find a sturdy structure. If that is not where you are, and if you don't know if it's anchored to the foundation, if you don't know if your roof's strapped, you leave and you go to a sturdy structure. Number two, if it's a home, you would go into the interior portion of your room. Some have asked, is a hall good? All I want you to do is put as many walls between you and the outside of the home as possible. So if there's 2 walls, that's 2 walls that would take damage before you would get hit by any debris. If it has tight walls, meaning it's a small space like a closet or a bathroom, those are even more safe. And if you have a bathtub, getting in a bathtub in a center of the house is also a safest space. So at that I want to blanket answer the question because I know we're going to get it. If you want to remember how to know what to do if a tornado warning is issued, just remember the word duck. D is downstairs, U is underneath something, C is in the center part of your house, and K is keep away from windows. So if you remember duck, then you'll remember where to go in your house. So I just wanted to answer that one because I know there's going to be a lot of those questions. Let's see, Jennifer is saying that we're her go-to when there's active weather. I appreciate that, and I hope I've explained some of the uncertainty and some of what I feel confident on. I am never trying to sell something that I don't think is going to happen. I'm never trying to overhype or underhype. I just want to share the information that we have and the analysis that I can present to you, because there's no way that there's not complexity in terms of how this unfolds. Pam is asking, what is the track near Bowling Green? So is it accurate to say, guys, that one's weakened significantly?
Yeah, and the stronger cell will say southwest of Bowling Green.
So the storm,
southeast, rather.
So accurate to say the tornado warned storm for Bowling Green no longer has a warning and has weakened?
Absolutely correct.
So that storm has collapsed, and the southern storm, which is near Scottsville, is stronger. And this is, again, why there's complexity here. These are moving into an atmosphere that should support numerous severe thunderstorm warnings, and it's not happening. So there are things here that are challenges that are occurring that make this complicated. Let's see. What is the time in Louisville? So Louisville, it looks a little later, 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. So I would just want to mention, Louisville includes Shively, Metro, Shively, PRP, West End, Downtown, Highlands, Preston. This would include areas like Fern Creek. This would include you in the Hurstbourne area, would include New LaGrange area, would include Worthington, would include along Zorn, Middletown, J-Town, Fisherville, Anchorage. This would include you in southern Indiana, in Clarksville, in Jeffersonville, in Corden. This would include you south in areas like Shepherdsville and Mount Washington. And there are challenges, and but if I mention your time, understand that means your time. So if I mention it for one county, it probably applies to the two around it. Amanda's saying, thank you for confirming my concerns on a mobile home. Of course, you know, I wish I could go to every single home and give you an accurate assessment of your specific home, but as you guys know, it's hard. It really is. Sellersburg time frame similar to Louisville. Henryville, and every time I hear somebody from Pekin or Borden or Henryville or Chelsea or Marysville ask a question, there's a part of me that always feels uncomfortable because I know what you went through. I have friends from your area, so I know where your question's coming from, and I know the question really is, Mark, I went through the tornado in 2012. It was one of the most scary things I've ever dealt with, and I just want to know if this is Henryville all over again. And I would tell you that I don't think it is. We don't have discrete cells. We have embedded cells in the line and supercells in the line. Anything that gets ahead of that line is still going to have the chance of producing a strong tornado. And I'm going to tell you one more time, I think that we are going to see tornadoes in our area tonight. I think we're going to get damaging to destructive winds. I think if you're west of I-65, I think you have a very, very good chance. But if you're asking me out of Henryville, does this compare to what we saw in 2012 where you saw violent EF4 with softball-sized hail? My answer is no. I don't think it's going to be that intense. Let's see here. Curtis is saying, what about Hardinsburg, Indiana? Time frame's not too different from Pekin, Borden. So I'm going to put in Hardinsburg, Indiana. I'm going to go from around 10:30 through around 12:30. Accurate to say, guys, we're getting some cells that are going ahead of the line now, coming out of Indiana or into Indiana.
Right. We just switched over to Evansville to get a better look at the one that's just north.
So let me just give Rick a chance here because Rick is looking in there. And let me just move the mic over to you, Rick, just so we can make sure that you can get that. So Rick has got his eyes, as does Bryce, on radar alone while I'm doing this. So what you guys know is that when one of us are talking, the other one's behind the scenes that is staring at what's going on.
Yeah, Bryce is checking out chat. I'm keeping an eye on radar with Bryce. And that one cell of Morganfield broke ahead of the line immediately.
tornado warned. So, I mean,
take long.
it's
And it's
tapping into
also-
that wind energy that you just spoke about.
And I think we would both agree on this. These are not short fuse warnings, which means the Weather Service would be more convinced that this is going to pose a long-term tornado threat.
Long-term tornado threat, and on top of that, there's a pretty good hail core, which is probably going to clip Uniontown. So that's right along, the river. So if you are, have friends and family in Uniontown, there's some large hail moving in that direction. The southern side has the rotation on it, but this is kind of how it's going to play out. If storms pop out ahead of that main line, like you said, they're going to have that enhanced risk for producing tornadoes and also some large hail. The line itself is still way back off to the west. So, just showing you what happened with one storm is a great example of what may occur in multiple different locations.
And I appreciate that, guys. If you don't follow Rick DeLuca or Bryce Jones, they're on Facebook, they are on Twitter, they are on Instagram. They're basically everywhere. So if you don't see me, you can always get the information from them as well. When I'm not here, I'm on vacation, these are the guys that you're going to look to. So what I would say is if you don't follow them, they're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, follow, they're great follows. And I trust these guys. They know how much I appreciate them and how good I think they are. And so we will all be working together tonight. This is a team. I say this a lot. My team can tell you this, but the way that we have crafted the way that we cover severe weather is it's not the Marc Weinberg show. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is if I am to try to do all of this myself, I can only ingest so much information. So when I'm at the weather wall, I can't be looking at what's going on in the National Weather Service chat. I can't be looking at other products like these guys can when we have 3 eyes on the radar. So we have approached severe weather coverage as let's have the best people, not just locally, but anywhere in the country, and let's make sure that we have the best minds that are constantly looking at data. So what that means is, if I've walked over to the weather wall and I'm in front of the green screen, you know full well that there are 2 other people whose eyes are pegged on radar as well. And so we have 3 people with significant radar expertise that are nonstop looking for things like debris, rotation. How does it change from scan to scan? Every time I see, let's say the rotation comes up, am I seeing debris? Does that tell me it's a tornado possible? If I'm seeing debris, I need to ratchet this up now. Now I've got a tornado on the ground doing damage. These are the things that we are all going to be doing with 3 minds to try to make sure that we cover. And that is the value of what we do here. So again, if you don't follow Rick and Bryce and Matthew as well, Matthew worked with me extensively on Sunday night. And Jude will be coming in and meeting us at 2 a.m. in the morning. And, if you're thinking, man, that stinks getting up at 2 a.m. Didn't Bryce work yesterday morning? Yeah, I actually worked yesterday morning in the midday. I called Bryce at around 4 p.m. yesterday, and I said, Bryce, I'm thinking that we got to make an adjustment on some scheduling here so that we can make sure we cover this. And what Bryce said is, let me just talk to my wife, and yes. And that's that kind of attitude that we get with some of these guys is what makes our team very unique. And so I can't give them enough praise. And they know that I'm not just saying that because I do their job reviews. And if they weren't doing a good job, they know they would be getting a bad review. But more questions here. I need information from the Corridon area. Absolutely. So Corridon, I think the storms are near your area. I'm going to go between 9:30 and 11:30, only because we're getting renegades out ahead of that line now that are starting to form. If those get going, they have access to more fuel. It's a dynamic situation. This is not a slam dunk in how we deal with it. But Corridon, we've got a camera in your town and we're watching. We have cameras in 7 locations in our area. We have downtown Louisville, actually 2 in downtown Louisville. We've got 1 in Simpsonville. We've got a camera in Bardstown. We've got a camera in Corridon. We have a camera in Seymour, and we have a camera in the Knob. So we have 8 cameras that are around our area, and these are going to be watching your area nonstop. If you're like, that would be cool to see that camera where I live, you can. Go to WDRB.com. You'll see a tab that says weather. Hover your mouse over it, or you can just kind of click on it with your finger if they're using a phone, and you'll see something that says weather cameras. These are live streaming views of our cameras, and you can view them nonstop. So that is the way you can do that. Any other questions here? What does it look like for Okolona? Damaging winds and some tornadoes are possible. strong tornadoes are not out of the question for Metro Louisville, and we will be watching that very, very closely. Freetown, Indiana, so I think it's going to be in your area just a bit faster. So I'm going to say 9:30 through around 11 is when it should be in your area. Remember, we have a camera in Seymour, and we will be watching the storms with those cameras. And if you guys can, and let me be clear on this, if you can safely get any pictures of the storms or what damage it's done or what's happening, if you upload that onto the post on my page that is pinned, Bryce is going to be nonstop looking at those, and we'll be able to get those to air, and that can help us. That is why you kind of have become, in a sense, an army of storm spotters, if you can do it safely. So important there. Let's see here. This is a great question. Should windows be open or closed during tornadoes? So let me rewind back to the 1990s. We know that the pressure is much, much, much lower in tornadoes. So let's just use as an example. Let's call our background pressure right now 1,000 millibars. Now I'm going to give you reference points. Category 1 hurricanes are about 980, 970. Category 5 hurricanes are in the neighborhood of around 920 to 900 millibars. So we know that in the center of these stronger tornadoes that the pressure is around 900 millibars. And we know that pressure changes very, very quickly. In the 1990s, it was presumed that the reason homes are getting damaged so bad by tornadoes is that the pressure difference was causing the home to explode. What we know in the now and in the last 15 years is that is absolutely false. And so there was a time where we said open the windows to equalize the pressure if a tornado is approaching. In 2025, we know that that is garbage and was a horrible thing to advise. We just didn't know. So in 2025, we know that your house never will explode from a pressure gradient of that magnitude. So if you open the windows, now you're allowing debris to penetrate through the window without any resistance, which means now it's full speed hitting the interior wall, which means if it only pierces one wall, now it hits you. If you close the window, let it shatter the window. That window would then take away some of the energy, and hopefully then that would mean the second wall that it hits would maybe be the inside wall, would then stop the debris altogether and protect you. So it's a really, really good question. And I know that the old advice was wrong and confusing, but that is how we evolve as a science. We know more now by far than what we knew back then. So it's a really, really good question. Peggy Sue is asking what time for Charlestown. So Peggy Sue, I think for you it's going to be same as Louisville, 10:30 through around 12:30. A really good question from Emily. Since Cape values have dropped a little, will that lower severe potential? I'm located in Hanover. Number one, you get a gold star. That's really, you obviously have been watching us and have knowledge. So for some that don't know what Cape is a term we use for fuel. So the science term is Cape means convective, available, potential energy. If you guys remember back in college or high school, you were taught about what's called potential energy. So if I put this foam ball up here, it has potential energy. What does that mean? It means that it has no energy right now because it's not moving. But because of gravity, if I let it go, this potential energy is converted into kinetic energy, meaning it moves fast. So potential energy doing nothing turned into kinetic energy. So in thunderstorms right now, everything that's ahead of that line is potential because the air isn't rising yet, or we would have thunderstorms. What thunderstorms do is transfer that energy from potential into kinetic, and it's through air rising really fast. Higher the Cape or potential energy, the faster the air can rise, the more severe the thunderstorms. So you're asking out of Hanover, Indiana, do I think that that energy could get ripped a little bit by that southern line? My answer is no. My answer would be is our southeast counties, which would be areas specifically, and Bryce knows me well enough to know he zoomed right there, Campbellsville, Greensburg, Munfordville, Hodgenville, Lebanon. Rick, sorry. Rick's sitting over there.
It's been a long week.
I was looking to square at radar, so Rick over there, he was giving me the eye. So the energy would come down to areas like Munfordville, Campbellsville, Lebanon, Columbia, and Greensburg. And I think that Hanover and Madison may not actually be affected by that line. So I would keep that cape really high for you, or high enough still for you. And remember, the winds change direction with height. We had 4 tornadoes that occurred now 3 weeks ago that occurred. Remember the Orleans tornado? There were 2 in Lawrence County west of Bedford, and there was 1 in southern Jackson County near Brownstown. And if you recall, that was with 200 cape because the winds changed direction with height. A lot of the guys on my team always ask me how I remember tornadoes and hurricanes from all the years in the past. They say sometimes I'm an encyclopedia, but I don't. I think because
It's insane.
it's not insane. I'm like kind of a numbers guy, so all that kind of just sticks to me. So, you know, when we try to think back to what happened in blah 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 year, I tend to remember that stuff. So, any more questions here? I want to. We're going to go back to me analyzing here with the guys in a moment. We still have everything is warned, whether it's severe or tornado coming out of Indiana. There are still renegades ahead of the line near the Evansville area, and then eventually it's going to overtake the area of thunderstorms and rain. That's going to go from E-Town, Bowling Green through Campbellsville. When that happens, it gets much more complicated. Bedford and Lawrence County is now under a severe thunderstorm warning. Rick, since you have that, what's the risk, and is it tornado possible?
So the hazard's 70-mile-per-hour winds.
So Rick just said 70-mile-per-hour winds are heading towards you in Bedford, Indiana.
$half size hail.
$half size hail, is that 1, 1 1/4?
It's 1 1/4.
So $half size hail, anything that gets towards golf balls is a guarantee to do damage. $half is possible to do damage.
The last one, tour possible.
Tour possible. So the Weather Service in Indianapolis is going tour possible for Bedford. Rick, one thing when Bryce comes back in, let's go through all of our cameras, get them aimed to the west so we can prep the cameras. So what we're going to do is on all of our cameras, prep them. Prepping them means get them aiming west so they can see the storms. Eyes on the storms give us eyes that can help us beyond what the radar can assess.
Pretty large warning, too.
It is a large warning, and Rick alludes to the large size of the warning because what it means is they're confident further downstream that it's going to do damage. So they're issuing warnings full downstream on these storms. I'm in Jeffersonville, and I'm on the 2nd level unit, nowhere to go. What should I expect? So Jeffersonville, potentially damaging to destructive winds between 10:30 and 12:30, and tornadoes are possible. My opinion is if you get to the point where you go under a tornado warning, go to your neighbor downstairs, knock on his door, and ask him to let you in. And I don't think that, I know the heart of this area, and I cannot imagine anybody within this area, if you say, I need help, them say no. I just don't think that's in the fabric of who we are. Has he looked at Scottsburg? Scottsburg, Indiana, we would be concerned a little bit earlier. So I would say 10 through around midnight, only a little bit earlier because the line's going to advance faster. It could be very easily on the front side of that around 10. Bardstown timing. So I haven't addressed Bardstown. Bardstown, that area of rain could affect the quality of your fuel. I'm going to say in your area between around 12:30 and around 2:30 when I'd be most concerned. But there is an area of rain moving towards you that is in advance of this line, and it may weaken your fuel, which would be good. Lower the fuel, lower the severe threat. So I am a little encouraged that that rain may clip your area because it may affect the quality of fuel for your area. Somebody said, is there a way to watch the news on a Roku? So I believe that WDRB is available in several ways. So number one, you can get us on YouTube TV, you can get us on Hulu, you can get us on your regular cable. Beyond that, there is an app that we have called WDRB+. WDRB+ will show our live newscasts, which will be on at 10, even if it's not a tornado warning. Number two, WDRB+ is also going to allow you to see our streaming tornado coverage when we go live. We'll obviously be on regular TV, but we don't normally do our live coverage on Facebook. It's a long story, but we don't have a very effective way right now to do that. So WDRB+ is going to allow you can, if you download that app, you can watch it on your phone. You could even download it if it's on your TV. I don't know if it's on all TVs, but I believe it's on the Samsung OS. So you could then just launch that app on your TV, just like Netflix, and watch the live coverage on your TV. Super, super helpful. So WDRB Plus is showing old weather videos. How do you see what we have live? So when we go live, WDRB Plus would then transition into our live coverage, and it should have an indicator on there to watch us live. And if you watch WDRB Plus at 10 o'clock, anytime our newscasts are live, in the morning it's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 p.m. through 10 p.m. We are on from 11:30 to 12:30 p.m. We're on from 4, 5, 6, and 7, and then we're live again on there 10, 10:30, 11 through 11:30. So anytime there's a live newscast being broadcast on the Plus, you would see your ability to click into that. Let's do 3 more questions, and then I'm going to start to spend my time on radar because we have active severe approaching. Let's see. At 9, I have to drive from Shepherdsville to Fairdale. Will I make it before the storms arrive? At 9, you will. You will get ahead of the storm. So there's good news for you there. That's question number 1. While I've still got you here, I'm just going to go through the data. I'm going to tell you the same thing I told you just a few minutes ago. There is a threat of potentially destructive winds and strong tornadoes. On the Indiana side, every one of our counties have that threat. And if you're on the Kentucky side, near 65 and west would have the greatest threat. As you get to near the river, that could cross over onto both sides. But I would tell you the data right now continues to show this exact potential. So 2 more questions here. Shepherdsville, again, I just noted that you're in an area where I do think you could see destructive winds and tornadoes. I think it's going to be in your area between 10:30 and 12:30, and we do have time for one more question. I'm not sure I understand this. Someone's asking if storms have gotten stronger because of technology. So I want to address one thing. There's been a lot of talk about has Tornado Alley shifted. My opinion, and it's mine, is that research says it has. But we also need to be aware that that research includes tornado count. We know that 25 years ago that in Dixie, we call it Dixie Alley, which would include one of the areas that gets hit very hard with tornadoes very consistently. It's a very forested area in Alabama, Mississippi, and a lot of the tornadoes, we just simply didn't know that they occurred there, the weaker ones. Their bigger ones obviously chewed through trees so much. But if you were to ask me, what is Tornado Alley? I would say that there's traditional Tornado Alley, which goes up the plains, and there's Dixie Alley, which includes our area southward. And I would say we're just much more aware that Dixie Alley is a significant tornado area. And if you were to ask me, has it shifted, has it not, I would just say Tornado Alley's in L. And that would be my answer to that, is that Tornado Alley is not just what we were taught as kids, that it's Kansas, Nebraska, southward to Oklahoma, and into Texas. Tornado Alley goes from that area and then comes through the southeast U.S. And on the northern side of Dixie, it does include our area. So that would be my answer towards that. But it's a fair question. I don't think that was necessarily a question on the severe, so I'll give you 2 more questions here still. Somebody's asking about out west tornadoes. So we have 1, 2 tornado warnings out west. Most of the stuff to the south is not. When you get beyond Evansville, you run into 2 more tornado warnings near Paducah. So we've got 1, 2, let's go south on that, Rick. 3, 4, 5, 6, let's keep going south. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 tornado warnings in effect, and that goes all the way through Arkansas. So that's a good question. And let me go with the last question here. Is southeast Jefferson County in the concern risk? Yes. Destructive winds and tornadoes are possible, some of which could be strong. All right, guys, it's 8:51. There's 5,500 people in here. I'm going to end the video momentarily, but I'm going to ask you a favor. 5,500 of you click share right now. Your friends and family can then come into the video even after it ends and watch everything we just went through, which means that they can get all of this information, and it's important. So please share that video. Let your timeline know what's going on. Number 2, if you enjoyed the video, you can throw a thumbs up and a heart. And lastly, my favor would be is I do this for a living on TV. And it's important that you guys support us in that way, and that's how you assure that I'll be here forever. Well, not forever, but for the rest of my career. I'll be on at 10, at 10:30, or at 10, 10:22, 10:37. Rick will be on the top of the hour at 11 and 11:17. Make sure you turn on the TV and watch us. If you can't, because you don't have cable or Hulu or YouTube, you can always stream us through WDRB Plus or WDRB.com. And that's how you guys support us. So please, again, share the video, let people know, and I'm going to rest my voice for a little while. It's been a pretty busy few days, hasn't it? From 5 tornadoes that occurred in our area on Sunday to sadly having to deal with that again. I'm worried about flash flooding later in the week, and I think we're going to possibly see more severe weather on Saturday night. So we're far from done with this, and all that other information you're going to also need as well. So I'm going to rest here for a little while, my voice. Remember, if we get tornado warnings, make sure you go to WDRB.com or WDRB Plus or turn us on TV. I hope we don't see any, but I can assure you that I think that we probably will. So if we don't have a tornado warning before 10 o'clock, I'll see you guys on WDRB News at 10.